he doesn't really know all things, as the open theist might claim, versus he may not be able to have the power to know the future libertarianly free choices of creatures, as the Calvinists would ultimately have to claim.
And so what he's basically trying to say here is that Calvinism limits the power of God, because we're basically saying that God can't do something. God can't know future free will choices, so we're saying that God can't do something because he's not quote-unquote powerful enough. Now, the way you word that is that God doesn't have the power to know it, right? As if the thing can be known in the first place, right? It's not about whether or not God's powerful enough. The ultimate point here is that it's whether or not it's possible in the first place, logically speaking. So when we start talking about things that God can and can't do, we're going to quote-unquote limit God. There are positive limitations of God, and there are negative limitations. A negative limitation would be that since God's not powerful enough, he can't do something. That would be limiting God in a negative sense, right? And nobody is going to do that, right? Nobody's going to negatively limit God. But that is not the category of limitation that I am talking about on this particular topic of God knowing future free will choices. We are claiming a positive limitation. So a positive limitation is something that God can't do precisely because he is God. And there's a very long list of things that God can't do. God can't create another God like himself. God can't cause himself to cease to exist. God can't sin. I mean, to summarize it all, God cannot do illogical things, right? And it's not limiting God to say that. It is actually upholding God for who and what he is by saying that God cannot do those things. So this is what Calvinists are saying. We're saying that it is logically impossible for God to know future free will choices. It's not that future free will choices can logically be known, and then we're denying that God can know them. That would be limiting God and his power. That would be saying, hey, look over there. There's something that does exist. There's something that can be known, and I'm going to say that God can't know it. That's not what's going on here. What we're saying is future free will choices, knowledge of those choices cannot exist. It is impossible to know them in the first place, right? And so it is not a negative limitation of God. It's a positive one, right? So I reject this idea that Calvinists are limiting the power of God by saying he can't do something. There's plenty of things that God can't do. Both sides would agree that God can't do certain things. And the question is foreknowing free will choices a logical possibility or not? The other side just throws it out there without justification at all. Not once did they justify their claim that free will choices can be foreknown. They just say, well, God's God and he can do it, right? And I hope that distinction can be seen by people who are listening, that there's a major difference between the two sides here, that one side has logical justification, the other does not. Your claim is that God can, in fact, know future free will choices. You say God's God, he could do it, it's a mystery, so on and so forth, but you offer zero justification for that claim.